I got out of the hot tub 5 minutes ago and I didn't plan anything.
I mean, if you were in the hot tub, then that's all you need to do.
Yeah.
That's everything. I'm going to share the screen just so audience members can see this, but I am in the Fig Jam.
Cool. So you're familiar with Fig Jam and how it works and everything? Do you need a primer on any of the tools or?
No, I'm pretty good.
Perfect.
Can you guys see the screen? I just see the punk.
Oh yeah, I do too.
In Google, we just got the profile picture. I don't know if it matters on your end for recording purposes, but
I see the Fig Jam on recording, but if not, I can fix it in post.
Okay, cool. All right, let me pop over to
Probably
Fig Jam. Yeah, probably. So yeah, I mean, these are just some notes from the first call, right? Just kind of going over the fact that, obviously you have a lot going on with ETH Denver, and it sounds like you sold out, or at least booked out for the event space that you're throwing, which is really rad. And that we would just basically be primarily working on, logos and branding, possible design system for UI stuff, and then focusing on dots, visual aesthetic, as well as we kind of work through everything on the docket. And then, I know that Sage and Austin went through and just did their own sort of onboarding test earlier today. And I know that you have all of the products siloed right now. So Passports is kind of its own separate thing and all these things. I guess at what point are you trying to focus on uniting them all, to make the onboarding flow a little bit more slick? I know you've got that probably lined up in your head that you want to do that, but I guess.
Probably sooner than you think. So I can screen share at some point as well. But so I've built a passport app, test flight probably this week. That streamlines a lot of that, right? Yep. Initially, it's the buy to passport to print workflow is basically the same. The actual onboarding flow is actually the same, but once you have a passport, that gets a lot easier right now. What are stamps and how do you dive into the community and all those kinds of things. And then the goal is to, over the next, I'd say 30 days, maybe a little bit longer depending on the dots work, to actually streamline that further, right? So the idea is you sign in with a wallet, you buy native, you mint a print, you get a passport all in one flow. Right now it's entirely built for kind of crypto natives, no pun intended, that kind of know what they're doing, and that friction it's by design. I don't like it. I'm fundamentally a consumer product builder, but I also know that it's fine for now. But it's something that I definitely want to fix over the next 30 to 45 days.
Yeah. No, I mean, I know talking with these guys earlier that, it just seemed intentional, and obviously everyone that's coming in from at least Farcaster and a lot of, people from Twitter just can plug in and know what they're doing. So I don't know if you guys want to follow up with anything, Austin or Sage, on that portion of it. Otherwise we can kind of just jump in.
Yeah, no, nothing much to really follow up on. Definitely just, seeing that the onboarding flow is a bit separated and, could be streamlined a bit more, as we figure everything out. But I mean, it's very you're just kind of building and adding to it, and it's perfectly natural the stage it's at. So I have nothing to add.
Sweet.
All good here.
Cool. So if we jump over to the second, if you want to follow my cursor, I'm just going to go over the agenda really quick. So we are recording. Always want to make sure we're doing that. We reviewed the notes, and then I want to just review the arena mood board real quick. So if we go down here, I pulled some selects on the left-hand side, if you follow my cursor, and just kind of walk us through the ones here that stick out the most to you, and like why you picked them specifically? I know some of them are more maps based. Obviously, like we've got some video games in here, like Roller Coaster Tycoon, and we've got this nice map of, I guess, like the New York subway attendance or ridership, and then a lot of generative art too. And these are like specific projects that you've picked. So if you want to just kind of walk us through each of these and why they're important to you.
Yeah, so and it seems like every time I drive the Fig Jam or the Fig Jam, we lose on the recording. So I'll just talk and let you drive.
Okay.
I'll do that. Yeah.
I think the first thing that stands out to me is the age-old Roller Coaster Tycoon image, right? And that is one of the genesis ideas for Native was this idea of a simulator where the little NPCs aren't as NPC, right? Like they are kind of playable, they are kind of interactive and things like that, and you can see them moving, etc. And the money matters, right? So the money matters in Roller Coaster Tycoon as well. It just allows you to build, more rides and expand the park and things like that. In Native, it matters like in the real world. You know what I mean? So that combined with the idea of civilization, which is the pick to the left, those two things have just been like a part of my childhood. Aesthetically, they don't resonate with me, but like conceptually, they do. This idea of, not to be sacrilegious or anything, but playing God, playing manager in the Roller Coaster Tycoon's case, in Civ's case, it's, city planner, like that type of thing. That's always been super interesting to me. And this idea of world building, I think we're all, as humans, I think we're captured by world building and this idea that there's like a world beyond our current world, whether it's in imagination or, in space time or multiple dimensions. It's like the scientific version of that. The afterlife is, kind of a religious version of that. The idea of like Lord of the Rings and this Middle Earth, right, kind of piece, like there's a world beyond the world type thing, I think is really interesting. And taking that concept to the digital realm is kind of what Native's about. And so, like, I've done a lot of lore building that I haven't talked about. You kind of see it with some stuff, like in passports, like the stamps or the badges type stuff that I demoed. But yeah, I think that's really fascinating to me. And that dovetails directly with like the Singapore Metro map and the ridership map. And the transit maps from Mini Metro. I've always been fascinated by public transit. I love public transit. I'm kind of a nerd about it. I think, New York subway gets a lot of hype. I think DC's transit system is like wildly underrated. And just love the idea of being able to go from place to place within a city and not, getting on a car, but the representation, the visual representation of that for me has always been the Metro maps and diving over them, poring over them, learning about them, etc. The ridership thing I added just because I found that visual pretty interesting. Not the static version, but you could actually kind of dive into, and I think, Dan, we talked about this idea of layers on the native UI, and it reminded me of that conversation, which I think is super interesting.
Yeah, it's like a heat map in that respect.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think the nice thing about the Metro maps too is that they, no matter what country, right, they all have this universal visual language to them,
Yep.
right? And that is somewhat intentional, so that if you go to city to city, you know what you're looking at, and generally how you're going to approach travel, because they do look a lot visually similar from place to place. So
Yeah, that's a good point. That there's not a ton of visual discrepancy between like London and New York and DC, etc. Even smaller cities like Atlanta is basically one line. San Jose has a light rail, like BART in the Bay Area or LA, etc. Like even smaller transit systems use the same kind of deal. It's like, if it's not broken, don't fix it. And Dr. No, just a real touch on that. This was at the like very beginning of the conceptualization of dots. I'd already decided on dots, and then I was doing a watch through of a bunch of Bond movies and saw this opening cinematic sequence from Dr. No, and it was just like immediately resonated. And part of that was just because I was thinking a lot about dots and things like that. And so visually it was kind of jumped off to me, super straightforward. There's not a lot of like creative aesthetics, or like it's very what's the word I'm looking for? Like where it is exactly what it says it is.
It's very super normal.
Yeah. And so that was a part of it. And then on the rest of the stuff kind of falls into this bucket of generative art. And I love on-chain, I love generative art. I think it's extraordinarily aesthetically pleasing. I think it also it's aesthetically pleasing, but to my eye, I know what has gone into creating something like this, like from a programmatic point of view. And so it's like beauty meets math, and the beauty actually abstracts the technical prowess that's like beneath the surface here, which is really cool, especially with some of the things like the Streamline, and Fidenza, and I really like this Maps of Nothing too, for probably obvious reasons.
Yeah.
It just like combines a lot of the themes that I like. The lower right hand corner, where it's generative maps, which is another theme of mine. Like I love maps aesthetically, and whether it's like D&D campaigns I've run, or books that I've written, or fiction short stories that I've done, or like whatever, I usually start with the world building process, and that starts with a map. And so I find this kind of a conglomeration of a bunch of different themes for me visually.
It's like data visualization, like even like the weather app has the wind chart, and like a bunch of data being visualized, and like what it forms when it's visualized.
Yeah 100%. And I think like Google Maps as an interface is something that we're all very familiar with, whether it's Google or Apple, right? I use Google, but it's fairly transitory. Like you can substitute one for the other. I think it's that style is like wildly underutilized for UI. And every time it has been utilized for UI, it's done well. I mean, look at Zenly, look at like Snapchat maps.
Yeah.
Like whenever there's something along those lines, it usually, like at scale, it usually does pretty well. I think about Foursquare and Gowalla and Brightkite, like the location-based apps from, I guess 07, 08. Those aren't on the mood board. They probably should be, but like, those are interesting to me.
Do you mind just repeating those again? I'll see if I can plop them in while you're talking.
Yeah. Foursquare, like the OG consumer version. Bright Kite. It's bright like opposite of dim, and then kite like you fly a kite, all one word. And then Gowalla, Gowalla, Gowalla. Those were like the check-in apps that you would become mayor of your local coffee house or whatever. Yeah, exactly. The mobile versions were phenomenal. I mean, there's probably an entirely like the mood board that I had put together, the arena board or whatever, is like very aesthetically driven. It's more like what's the look, feel, emotive pieces of native from my point of view.
Yep.
There's probably an entirely separate mood board and arena board to be done for like UI type stuff.
Yep.
I love like Path, for instance. One of the OG social networks. But yeah, I think maps as an aesthetic is super interesting, and you can do so much with it. Like they're so versatile, right? Like you have like Google Maps and Apple Maps, of course, but you also have like the pull down map from your classroom in high school, right? Like you have different projections of maps, which can be very interesting, etc. And like network maps, topologically speaking, like from a digital perspective, what the equivalent of a digital map is kind of a network map or a network topology.
Mm-hmm.
Those get super interesting as well, or they're just very versatile, and I think they're underutilized as a aesthetic. The two kind of outliers here on this board is this piece, the UI operations piece.
Yep.
This is the primary inspiration to me for, and this is from Dribble. I should probably attribute it, but it's a primary inspiration for UI for me, where it's like Google Maps-esque, but super clean. Like from a UI perspective, I really like this design aesthetic. It like it organizes the IA in a way that's like super scannable, easy to read, clean, but it's also information rich and dense, which I think for native is going to be necessary, where you're looking at properties and dots and like their forecaster feeds and tokens that are being exchanged and real-time transactions and all this kind of stuff. I think it is going to be information dense, and so figuring out a clean UI. So this is like one of the few UI things kind of on the board. And then the other thing is this item, and I don't know, like it just struck me as super aesthetically pleasing. It also has this kind of like individual components comprising a greater whole type thing, which is very reminiscent of dots, and in a city in general, where you are Dan or Austin or Sage, and you are a citizen of your local city, and like there's many like you, but you're all very different, and the citizenry actually makes up the city, right? In the same way, human passport holders and dots actually comprise native. Like native is not software. It's if I'm successful, native is not software. It's a aggregation of the content, the tokens, and all those kinds of things. The culture that's being built by dots and passport holders together. And that's kind of what I get from this, from a aesthetic / artistic viewpoint. So
yeah, it's like you can visualize the collective mass of what makes up native, or in this case, the art is uniform with what you're looking at. It's nice.
Yeah.
And
I'll be honest, I like topological maps like this, less.
Cool. That's what we're here
From
for.
a aesthetic point of view.
Yeah.
When I was meaning topology, let me look up.
Yeah, you're looking
Yeah,
at like
this is
network
part
maps
of,
type stuff, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
let me find a complicated one. These are all pretty.
this is part of the homework, Derek, is that we're gonna have to do some more UI and like more map stuff. So like whenever, I know you have a busy week, but whenever you do have a minute, maybe it's on the flight, or maybe it's something like that. You know, just add a few more to here or to the arena, wherever you wanna do it.
Yeah, I can do that.
But
That's pretty straightforward. I'll
Yeah,
have to find.
this ASCII art stuff, the nice part about it, to be honest, is that it's done, obviously, like somebody's done this by hand on a typewriter, and I think that imprecision is a nice thing because it's like inherently precise because you know it's a typewriter, but then it has ink, there's quality to the paper, there is, you know, the way that the paper is fed as well, which changes things, and I think it's that imprecision which is sort of nice in a way. This little variance on something that can be boring if it was just straight precision. But
I'd probably say, like, out of everything, if you force me to pin like 2 or 3 things, the maps of nothing piece would be top. The subway map aesthetic would be top. And I also really like, Dan, your comment on Farcaster that was like, you know, it's reminiscent of a circuit board, like the solder lines of a circuit board. You know, I don't want to lean too much into the digital thing. You know, frankly, I think a lot of that can come across as cheesy.
Yeah.
There's probably a really good, clean way to do it, and I'd be curious to explore that with you guys. But like, yeah, most of the time it looks like AI art, which is just
totally.
slop. You know what I mean?
I mean, you look at this isometric view of this inspiration right here, and it's just like, I mean, it just inherently looks like a circuit board. I've always thought that circuit boards look like little cities. I don't even think you have to lean into it. I just think that it will just end up looking like that without having to really blast it. You know?
Yeah.
I agree. And Sage, you said a word that's important to me aesthetically, like isometric. I know that sounds like a, you know, throwaway word or whatever, but like, I'm not looking at, you know, even though a lot of times I'll use like on-chain SimCity as a shortcut for what native is, like I'm not thinking of this as like a full-blown 3D kind of environment, at least in the short term, right? Long term, we raise a bunch of money, native's working, I hired like a team to build out, you know, to model, and they're just in Blender all day. Like that's one thing. But for the short term, it's, you know, it is kind of isometric. Google Maps again is kind of the UI reference, and you're right. Like it does kind of look like a circuit board. And this is like a random operational warehouse type thing. This is not native related at all.
I mean, were you just thinking that dots were just going to be kind of dots moving around, like for at least like nothing crazy, like they can just resemble an actual dot?
Yeah,
that's right. You can probably see this here. I don't know if I've actually never tried this. There we go. It does work.
Yeah,
you can actually see this here.
I don't know if I saw this sneak peek. Nice.
Yeah, this was the very first piece of video content I ever did. So this was everything that you see in a video is not Figma. Like I prototype in code, right? So like it's built. But this was like a mini map.
I want to give a quick
around. What was that? I'm sorry.
No, I had to mute it. Sorry.
No, you're good. But it was just like, you know, the very first thing that I built, a mini map of a native neighborhood, and the dots If you fast forward to the end, it would play it and then fast forward. Yeah, like when you hover over a dot, that dot's like pauses and you get some context about it, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So like that was the very first MVP alpha pre-alpha thing in my head of like what this could look like.
It's like a beehive, dude.
Yeah.
It's like crazy. They're all just doing their own thing.
Yep. And as they do it, they're transacting with clankers and generating fees for themselves and others. And that's the other thing is like you can go and look right now, like even in testing. This is kind of the insane thing of testing in prod. If you, I actually don't know if it'll work because the clanker guys don't put it in the URL. Actually, let me just do it this way. So like when you can see at the top, I've selected the native pair because native tokens, when they're generated with an LP against native. And like this is just from testing. These are like real tokens that people are already trading that are within the native world. And it is like bees. It's like they're just going about their day and working and eating clean eats and going to Book Hub or Study Buddy. Like I'm not predetermining any of this. This is entirely dot generated. Even down to obviously the slop that is the imagery that's generated here, but like yeah.
And now Study Buddy, Study Hall, Lunchtime, like these are all things created by the passport holders, correct?
No, those are created by dots arbitrarily. So yeah, I don't know, did I demo Dot Studio and Dot Spaces for you guys?
You did for Dan and I, but Sage didn't, I guess, get to see that. But yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to derail anything. I should have looked at that before hopping on. So I mean, yeah, just to save time, I don't mind looking at that on my own time.
Yeah, sure. There is one thing. So like when you create a dot, you give it a personality and a vibe, obviously. I actually use AI to give you, when you launch your dot, to give you a group of potential first tokens, and you can select the first from there, right? And then obviously whatever lore or bio or memories you give your dot is going to impact what they're launching. But there's no direct influence over the tokens, at least as of right now. It probably will be down the road, but not now.
Yeah, so like talking about beehive or even an ant colony, like those are kind of in line with what the bots do. It's not really too far-fetched to use that sort of comparison.
Yeah, that's right. But remember, it is, and I don't know if it was Dan or someone else, either at Clank, I don't know, it's all blurry to me, but like someone did bring up the ant farm analogy.
Yeah, that wasn't me, but that's a good analogy.
Yeah, it does break down because remember, passport holders are also active participants, right? So you're not going to like tell your dot to go like launch this thing. You would just launch it, right? And this is true today. Like on Farcaster, if you @TokenBot and you're like, hey, launch OpSys within the city of native, pair it with native, TokenBot will do that. It will create a native paired token that dots can then see. So every token that gets paired with native from Clanker, dots will be able to utilize and buy and trade and sell, right?
Is there any like I guess market cap restrictions from that? Could I just do it with $1,000 market cap of a, native paired token or anything like that, or?
Yeah, I mean, it follows the standard Clanker rules. So I think it's a single-sided LP. So it's not like it's like draining native.
Right.
But dots, in order to get it, need to spend native, and in order to, and then they'll sell it right on the flip side.
Yeah.
So yeah, because it's a single-sided LP, there's not any general restrictions there.
Makes sense.
Sweet. Well, I think this is a good point to switch over. I think we captured a lot here. Yeah, if you have time this week, and I'll try to remind you, if we don't get to it before the next meeting, it's fine, because we'll just switch some things around. But yeah, if you can spend some more time adding like more visual references, more sort of UX stuff, references like that, it'd be great. And I think we're going to touch on a little bit of that in the next set of questions. So we'll hop over there. So if we go over to the next section, we'll start with attributes. So a lot of these questions are going to feel maybe like repeat questions from our first call. Not all of them, some of them might be, but it's more about us getting these answers and using our own sort of like rubrics in the back end to get what we need in terms of how we're thinking about the branding and whatnot. So some of these questions might seem similar to each other. They might, overlap a little bit, but I think it's important to try to, just give a good answer to every single one of them, because there is a method to the madness behind the curtain, and we hope to show a little bit of that as we move through all these meetings. So yeah, I guess we'll just start with attributes. We'll try and keep these quick. I don't know. I mean, Derek, are you cool if we go over by like 10 minutes or so? I'm not really sure.
Yeah, I should be good today. Yep.
Okay. All right. I just
yeah,
want
I'm
to make sure that. Maybe what I'm going to do, I think it might be better if we just start with these questions first, and then we'll come back to the attributes. We can play around with this just to make sure we get everything in. So yeah, I don't know, Austin, if you want to take notes while we're going through these, but I guess we're recording as well. But yeah, I guess what brands have been uniquely outstanding to you and why in recent years? So I mean, this can be anything, but anything that just comes top of mind for you, something that you maybe always come back to, something that you saw recently that was really fresh and you can't get it out of your head. Anything that falls into that category of like, it's kind of taken over a portion of your mind because it looks so good or works so well. Feel free to give us some of those.
Yeah. I love everything that Kith does. I think they're super talented, even down to like the partnerships that they pursue, like the USPS Kith item was crazy. I love all things NASA. I know you guys are fans of Tom Sachs. I am as well. I own a few things from him, and like his NASA collection is stellar. Obviously his footwear like lives in my head. I think what other brands really stick out to me?
I mean, that's a good start. I mean, we can always, like, you can come back to these. We can revisit a few of them next week. But the reason we didn't sort of populate these questions to you beforehand is because we just want it to be like top of mind, like in the moment. So, yeah, that
I do like. They kind of stole it from me, I think, but because Sam Altman follows me so closely. That's a joke.
Nice.
But I think OpenAI's rebrand is good. I don't like their logo at all, but the like dot focused piece resonated with me. Overall, I actually think Claude does a much better job at branding, but
yeah, I like Claude's little like SVG, that kind of just stinky. It's fun. Cool. So now we get to typefaces, which I know you know a lot about. I know we've talked about it on our initial call. I know we talked about it a little bit on the last recorded call, but any typeface aversions, attractions in terms of, serif, sans serif, mono, any specific ones that you want to use, that you want to avoid, go for it.
Yeah, Aversion's Comic Sans.
Yep.
No shade to the Comic Sans project, but that font's terrible in all use cases. I actually tend to use. I like a lot more. I gravitate towards sans serif, but I don't have an aversion to serif. I like the bolder looks. All-time favorite font, gun to head, would probably be Gotham.
Nice.
I love like Heffler, Frere and Jones. I love pretty much all of their stuff. Although the GT America Napa version that we designed with Grilly type is up there as well. I love, and I love a lot of what Grilly type does, by the way. I typically don't like mono-spaced fonts, especially in design stuff, but I've been using it a lot at small sizes in native, and I kind of dig it. I use Firecode simply because that's what I use in my editor, and it looks familiar to me.
Yeah, we use Stanford Mono, I think, is the one that we've been using for OpSys, and then
Berkeley Mono.
Or Berkeley Mono, yeah, that's right. I knew it was
Some California college mono.
Exactly, that's where my head went. And then the other one that I've been using recently, and it's sort of like, I guess we're working on a little bit with the proxy stuff. I don't know if it'll stick, but Carbon, which is a Google font, and they use it quite a bit in like Call of Duty for like small heads-up display type stuff, and it just works so well. I think that generally monospace fonts work really well for smaller sizes because it's more predictable to the eye, and I think for like heads-up display type stuff and like hover type things, interaction stuff where you have informational little pop-ups happening, it does a really great job there.
Yeah, that's right. And that's how I've been using it, like secondary headers, smaller font, smaller point sizes, etc. I don't really use it larger than like 12 pixel graphic font, right? But I tend to like the bolder, Gotham, Enter, Satoshi is what I'm using right now. Futura, like that family of fonts, I tend to like a lot more for kind of brand stuff. Just because it's so versatile,
Totally. Cool. Let's keep moving on through here. So we got company that's closest to what native is trying to achieve. Aesthetic palette functionality can be a mix. So I know that native is very unique. So if you want to kind of marry a couple things together, that would be a great place to start.
That's a hard question. I think.
Yeah.
You guys might understand what I mean, but when I say this, like, I want native to feel, and this is very, very stereotypical, so take it with a grain of salt. I want it to feel like Apple. Not in the sense of like very monochromatic, logo-centric, they don't use a lot of type, like blah, blah, blah. I'm not talking about aesthetically. I'm talking about the opinionated nature. Like, Apple is an ecosystem, and if you don't buy it, go get a Windows or a Linux machine, right? Like, they don't care. Native is the same thing, right? Like, if you don't vibe with what I'm building, that's great. Like, go figure something else out to go use, right? Like, it's very clean, very approachable, aesthetic, but it's also very opinionated and rigid almost.
Totally. It's like inevitable.
Exactly. The accessibility is really important to me, by the way. Like a lot of words I'll use are like clean or whatever. Like, I want it to be, this isn't the near term vision, but a year and a half from now, like native could be something that you bring your friend into crypto via, right? And it's a super clean, like they install an app from the app store. They don't need to, go through Coinbase or whatever. They get an embedded wallet from Privy or whoever I end up using, and they can onboard via an in-app purchase, get their passport, and create a DOT all within the app, very, very quickly, right? In a consumer-friendly brand. Like that's important to me. So along those lines, like I think Apple does a really good job. I think Snapchat does a good job. Their UI design is subpar, but their brand design is very good. I think Instagram's actually the opposite. Their UI is much better than their actual brand.
Yeah, this is great. No, I mean, that's the Apple sort of idea and ethos is a lot of what native already is has going on. So
and there's one more thing from a functionality perspective, and I think I mentioned it last time, but maybe not. The idea, native has a bunch of different things within it. Like I'm calling them primitives just because it's a crypto word and it's easy to understand, but like passports and prints and homes and dots, etc. Like having a brand that can unify them. There's only a couple of brands that try to do that. The most successful in my mind is Microsoft. Like when you look at a Microsoft product, and I hate the overall aesthetic, but when you look at the Outlook logo, it's evocative of the Word logo, which is evocative of the PowerPoint logo, which etc. And so like that as a cohesive system is really, really well executed.
That's big. Yeah, that was a great add-on. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yep, including Microsoft. Yeah, because it's a sleeper aesthetic in a lot of ways, but like it's enough for people to link all these products in their head without having to think too hard. Like you just know.
Yeah, like whenever they launch a new product, if it's in the core like Microsoft /Windows/Office family, all they need to do is like launch the logo, and people instantly know, okay, that's a new Office product that's coming or whatever, right?
Yep.
Just off the logo alone.
Yep. Totally. This is great. This is so good. All right, so let's go to how native thinks creatively. So processes, rituals, hacks. This is just sort of like, the way you go about thinking about this sort of stuff so that we can hope to better align, So like, how do you go about selecting a font? How do you go about, I want to select this pattern to use? Rituals of like maybe, things that you check on a daily or weekly basis that keep you on the edge of what you're thinking about. Hacks, obviously, pretty obviously there, whatever that means to you. So a couple of those would be great.
So when I am thinking in general, I'm usually in the hot tub.
Nice.
I usually have pen and paper near me. I have, like, if you were to look at my desk, I've got Post-its all over the place of just like random stuff. You've seen some of my doodles, Dan, in person.
Yep.
Like I doodle a lot to like this type thing.
Dude, nice.
I'll just like, I don't know. I always have a deck of cards here, so that's what I'm doing off camera right now. While I'm thinking, I have like there's Star Wars and A16Z crypto and whatever this is. Like I just always have a deck of cards. So I'm doodling, I'm fidgeting, I'm thinking, I'm soaking, I'm drinking bourbon. And mainly just in my head. I get away from the computer, I get away from devices. I read a lot, I think a lot, etc. And then when it comes down to like actually like rubber meets the road, how do I choose a font? How do I choose patterns? I choose things that look good and feel good to me. I don't try to like over engineer or over design anything. because at the end of the day, like, I think the product and the tech should take the front seat, and the brand can help support that, right? The brand is almost like the teaser. So if you think of like native as a house or even a city, right? Like the brand is kind of like that welcome to Pleasantville kind of sign that you drive past. You're like, oh, that's like a cool looking thing. Like, I wonder what Pleasantville's all about, right?
Mhm.
Or it's the painted door and the like well-groomed shutters on a house and things like that. Like, you care most about what's inside the house. Like, I wonder what the floor plan is it open floor, etc. But the brand is like the first impression, from a visual perspective. It's the first impression. And so I think about like what makes a really good first impression that would want me to know more. So hacks, I have like, honestly, I have a repository that I have curated and kept since I was like in high school of fonts and brushes and patterns and all kinds of stuff like that I've just kept with. And sometimes I'll literally open font book and just like arrow through some of them. And anytime I see, like, I subscribe to a bunch of newsletters. I read about 200 to 250 blogs every day. Obviously, they're not posting every day, but like, I've got 200 250 subscriptions that I manage, plus newsletters, plus Substack, plus Twitter, plus Farcaster. Anytime I see something that's aesthetically pleasing, I'll pin it somewhere. I'll arena it. If I see a font, I'll download it, throw it into that repo.
Nice.
And just keep up like that way. And I think that's probably a hack.
Oh, totally. Yeah, not many people, I don't think, have been able to carry on with a collection for that long. Things happen to computers and hard drives and stuff, so that's impressive in its own way.
It's in Dropbox, right? So when I change computers or whatever, it's pretty easy for me to just download Dropbox and keep up with. I should probably move it to like Git or something at some point, but yeah.
So a lot of that 200 plus subs is done probably in the hot tub or on lunch or in bed at night, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I don't sleep much. That's the other hack. My Telegram community is like, dude, you're always on. I'm like, yeah, that's true. It's like, how much sleep do you get? About 4, maybe 5 hours a night. So
I feel like Sam's the same way.
I recommend it.
What were you gonna say?
I was just saying, I feel like Sam's the same way.
Yeah, he is. Sam Huber.
Oh yeah, probably.
Yep.
It's kind of interesting that you like the thing that resonates with me is like, you kind of, let me know if I have this correct, but it's like you kind of tap into like like high school Derek, right? Like, you kind of tap into this like, let me kind of stream into this, like, let me remind myself of the stuff that I really fell in love with, and the stuff I collected to kind of gather inspiration. And I think that a lot of people don't necessarily go there. I think a lot of people don't tap into that. And it's kind of very interesting, like, hearing you explain what inspires you and sort of this collection of ideas that you've gathered, because I see this in your mood board of, bringing in the Roller Coaster Tycoon, bringing in a lot of other examples. And it's like, it's kind of like you're taking like a cool childhood idea with the knowledge of where you're at in life now, and you're just kind of giving it a refresh and trying to spin off some inspiration. So it's cool. It's really cool to hear that. I'm somewhat the same way, but I don't have like a repo of that I can go back to. It's very, very unique that you have that.
Yeah, I think that's a keen observation. I'd frame it a little bit differently. It's not that I'm going back. It's like, I really haven't changed that much. You know what I mean? Like, I've been dope my whole life. So like, I don't know. Like, I still like games. I still play Magic the Gathering. I still like build and write code, and like I love hip hop, and I watch sports, and not a lot of that has changed since I hit puberty. You know what I mean? Like,
Are you running a blue and white deck, Derek?
yeah, obviously.
Okay, just checking.
Black Reanimator here. Yeah.
I play competitive, so I'll play mono red or green or whatever is like good.
Right.
But yeah, I'm primarily blue. The control piece, you know.
Absolutely.
Very opinionated, very controlling. So yeah, I think that's a good observation, and you know, I'm very fortunate. I had a great school experience. I had, you know, my high school was dope. My, you know, people I went to school with are dope. I married one of them. You know what I mean? Like, just a good overall experience. And I've always been like super academically engaged and like, you know, scholarly almost. Like I read a lot. I've always read a lot. Like, and I'm also kind of a pack rat. Digitally especially, and so because that's basically all I have. I've moved around a lot as an adult, and so you don't get to take a lot of stuff with you.
Yep.
And so when you can like keep a repository of like tech leadership articles I shared with Proxy earlier today, or you know, the font kind of stuff, like that's my equivalent of hoarding. So
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, some 8,000 fonts or something like that.
Yeah.
So it's like you just have these things over time. I guess that's an easy lead into the next one. So, I mean, a few of the top creative influences in your life: artists, you know, designers, architects, musicians, sports teams, athletes, these sorts of things. So, yeah, we already got a couple of them here, but, you know, feel free to go top of mind on these.
Yeah, man, that's tough. I have a playlist I can share with you guys. I actually probably just like,
yeah, I mean, if you just link things too, that's even better. I mean, because these sorts of things, like if somebody suggests music, I will listen to that music, you know, given that I can tolerate it, unless it's something really crazy while I'm designing, you know, and while I'm playing around with it to kind of
I don't know what you want to do with that, but
nice.
I also have
Very cool.
that. I have a bunch of playlists, but
That's awesome.
you know, just like music is huge to me.
Have you shared these in the TG or on Warpcast yet?
No,
Okay.
This is
It's exclusive.
an OpSys exclusive right now. So that's like, I've got a hip hop playlist. I listen to a lot. Like, music's huge for me in terms of creative influence.
Yeah.
You'll find on the binary playlist is what I primarily use when I'm building something. Like, I don't want to be distracted by words and music, so I listen to binary. It's a lot of Hans Zimmer. It's a lot of like, who's the other Hans Zimmer? This Swedish, like, what's his name?
I haven't brushed up on these guys for a while, so this will be great.
Listen to a lot of him. It's a lot of Hans Zimmer, a lot of like Daft Punk, Skrillex type stuff, a lot of Raminda Djawadi, Youth, Lane 8, stuff like that. Like that's basically my two sides. I'm either super hip hop, gangster rap, like, etc., or I'm listening to music that helps me build, like Lane 8 or Hans Zimmer. Yeah.
I'll have to send you my favorite, which is an album by Manuel Gotching. It's E2 to E4. It's a chess move, and it's like one of the earliest electronic, like, basically he recorded it all live. And I don't know, something about that album. It's like 1 hour long that just like sends me into the zone. And I'm sure you have that with, you know, some of the Hans Zimmer stuff.
Yeah. Lane 8 and Hans Zimmer both will yeah, I get into a zone pretty quickly. I've been listening to a lot of Roya, Roya. They're a newer duo band. They're phenomenal, by the way. Keep an eye out for them.
Okay.
They have also a very unique sound. When I first started listening to them about 2 months ago, they were like 300,000 monthly listeners. They're over 1 million now. So they're getting popular. So music's big.
Are you like a listen to a playlist kind of guy, or do you listen first song of an album all the way through?
Depends. So for hip hop, it's usually the latter. It's usually top to bottom album, because I think hip hop's one of the greatest narrative arts of our time. If I'm just like trying to get work done, it's more playlist type stuff.
Yeah.
Rarely shuffle though. I rarely shuffle. I curate.
Yep.
The experience, right?
It's
And that's the control.
range is too wide, yeah.
Yeah.
You can always hear the next song, like you know the next song that's gonna play, like with your curated.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's the same kind of thing. Like you'll hear about like tech founders like wearing the same thing every day, or whatever. It takes the cognitive load and like the cognitive whiplash out of the brain.
Yep.
So I can just like focus on, oh, I didn't know that song was in the playlist, right? Like I don't have to worry about that. I can just focus on what I'm building.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, I call it the cartoon closet. It's like a cartoon character. You just have like the same white shirt, the same jeans, and you just put it on every day, because it takes another, selection process and cognitive load out of the day.
Yep. Yeah, the most creative thing I do wardrobe-wise is hats. I've got a gazillion different hats, but I literally wear a lot of hats.
Dad hats, trucker hats, bucket hats.
All of the above. Not a lot of bucket hats, but dad hats, truckers, sports hats, strapbacks, fitteds, etc. And I've done that since I was a kid too. That's like always been the case.
Yeah. Loaded with hats myself. I have to the wife gets really upset and I have to go through them sometimes. So, they just inevitably get hidden into a bin in the basement that she doesn't know about. So,
yeah,
we'll have a reckoning someday.
There is one piece of art that I actually want to buy. It's like the one piece of art, because I'm a huge art appreciator. I've never wanted to collect it. But there's this guy, he's a photographer named Paul Caponigro, Caponigro. And he's a photographer, black and white. I love black and white photography. And he has this image. I'll paste it on the thing.
Nice. Here we go.
That's an apple on its side.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it's called the Galaxy Apple. I want to buy that piece of art. I saw it in person at a museum, and I literally stood there for like 10 minutes just looking at this thing. It's so beautiful to me. So that's like one influence, I think. Just
is that like data visualization, or is that just purely like just art from someone's mind that they just created? Like,
it's a photograph.
Yeah, that's a photograph.
Yeah.
Turn your head sideways. It's an apple.
Yeah.
With the lighting makes it look like a galaxy, or data visualization or whatever. It's like very interesting, but it's this idea of like something super simple creating something complex, right? I think it's really stellar.
Yeah, you just flip it.
No pun intended.
Context is completely different. Yeah, I mean, if you didn't say Apple, I wouldn't have gotten that instantly. It would have taken me a minute to see it,
Right.
and then it's like, oh wow, it just tosses everything on its head for like, yeah, you change up the context a little bit, rotate something, and it becomes a whole different idea.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, a lot of logos do that too, and I always appreciate that, whether it's like the Milwaukee Brewers logo or the FedEx logo with the hidden arrow, like that's the most famous one, but like,
yep.
You know, those kinds of like Easter egg, kind of like happy surprises is super delightful. And
yeah. I mean, those are usually pretty hard to come by unless it's a happy accident. But yeah, we try to get those as much as possible as we can, and it requires doing stuff like this. So it's good. All right, so let's see. We're an hour and 5 in. I know we got quite a few here. I don't know how many we want to be able to get through. I don't know how much time we can take. But how are we looking on time for everyone here?
I'm good. I'm done for the day meeting wise.
Okay.
Well,
cool.
We'll try to breeze through these so everybody can have dinner or what they got to do. But
yeah. Let's do another half hour. So see how much we can jump through here. So I'm gonna skip down a row. We'll get to that one if we need to. But yeah, I guess I'm gonna go in order of like my importance now. So yeah, for the third one in there, so like target primary users, specifically about native, right? Like, are there specific demographics? You know, what behaviors and engagement metrics are most critical for you right now, and like, I guess near term, and by near term, I guess we mean like 2 to 6 months. You know, like what does that look like?
Yeah, so primary target users, like I mentioned earlier, are like crypto natives. I'm not yet worried about like how do we bring grandma to native. You know, I'm not thinking about that yet. I do run a lot of stuff by my kids just because I wanted to feel like intuitive.
Yep.
But yeah, the primary target users over the next 2 to 6 months are like people like us, you know, crypto aware, want to do something cool with the chain. We're not, you know, we're looking beyond trading meme coins is kind of like the demographic, right?
Yep.
In terms of engagement metric, it's going to be, you know, dot transactions, native coins traded in volume. But in terms of behaviors, it's, you know, the highest signal thing to me right now is how many people have minted a passport. That's like the most, because that's the most complex thing that you can do within native right now. And it like, okay, that shows me that you vibe with what I'm building, you know?
Yep, totally. Because it's not a quick process. Like I remember when I went, I was like, okay, cool. This is something a little bit more involved. I'll do this like later today, you know? And then I went back in and did it. And that's, you know, somebody that comes back and is like, oh, this is going to take a little bit more time is exactly who you want to be.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And, you know, the word there is intentionality. Like I want people intentionally in native, you know, like you shouldn't be in native on accident.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Cool. So I guess leading into, I'm going to go 2 over on this one because it's a similar one. So what types of UGC are expected and imagined by you? You know, how do you moderate, curate, and dog feed what is like native coded UGC? Because I know that this is like a huge part of it, right? Like there's going to be this natural spread to what people are posting about, you know, whether it's screenshots or shareable moments, that type of stuff. But just kind of getting a general idea of what you're thinking about in that world.
Yeah, I think it's hard to imagine right now what the actual UGC is going to look like versus like DGC or dots generated content. But like, you know, how are people going to interact with dots, etc.? I'm not 100% sure. I think initially a lot of it is going to be kind of like alpha gathering is what I imagine. Like people interacting with dots to try to get like, okay, what's a dot gonna do next, or what is a dot gonna buy next? Like a lot of the initial UGC, I bet, is going to be trying to front run the economy, like trying to front run the dots. I think over time, it becomes more collaborative where people and dots are like trying to, like, the basic stuff is going to be off the table. Like someone will have tacos cornered or coffee cornered or whatever. Then it's like, okay, how do we get a little bit more detail oriented? And I think the collaboration piece with dots is going to emerge over time. That's what I imagine is going to happen. In terms of how to moderate and curate, it's, you know, that's part of the reason why I'm building it on Farcaster. Is like their spam labels, etc., are going to be, you know, super valuable for me. I don't have to worry about that kind of stuff.
Like that's kind of what I'm hearing. Like at the beginning, it'll be like almost like a PvP or a PvD. You know, it'll be like people versus dots, sort of. But like after a while, there will be like almost like a plateau in that kind of gaining of that, and you'll kind of have like a more probably ideally like stabilized kind of relationship in the ecosystem.
Yeah, I think that's right. And that's probably a good way to put it, is like eventually it's PvD and it becomes PvP over time.
Right.
Or it's like in parentheses PD versus PD.
Right. Because every dot is technically sponsored. Yeah.
Well, not every dot is sponsored, but many of them will be.
Right.
So yeah, I think that's right. And then you'll have like the emergence of factions and things like that. Inevitably. I think, and that'll be like really interesting to see, right? You know, like in Civilization, you form treaties with other societies and things like that. Like, what's the equivalent of that on Native? I don't know. Like, is it me DMing you and be like, hey, let's like collectively, corner the co-working space market or whatever? Like, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, imagine if you like integrated some form of like lockup, you know, and then you just like had like a, you know, you guys all contributed to like a hedgy lockup of like whatever, you know, it's like of auto sign tacos or whatever. Yeah. Something to consider. It's cool.
To me, that kind of ties into like your whole like during the onboarding flow for the passport. It was so interesting how you have this like it really prevents like bots from creating a passport. Like you really made that very clear. That like because if that were to happen, then you know it kind of ruins the whole ecosystem. But yeah, it's just like it's very interesting how you like assign a score, and if someone doesn't meet that score, and kind of like acts like a reCAPTCHA, and like there's a lot that goes in to like get these people through the door. So it's kind of interesting. There's
actual reCAPTCHA integrated as well. It's kind of behind the scenes, but that is the goal. Like I'd much rather exclude a human from getting a passport than include a dog getting a passport.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I think inevitably there is going to be crossover. Like a dot will have a passport one day. I think it's inevitable, but like I shouldn't make that easy.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Somebody would have to give over the keys right now to do it. I'm sure somebody will, but you know, we figure it out when we get there. Yep. All right. Let's see. Yeah. So I mean, this one's interesting for me, and I think we might have touched on this a little bit, but like, you know, who do you consider the main competitors to be, right? Because like there isn't many people doing something even similar like this, but yeah, I mean, are there any gaps or trends that, you know, obviously Native is aiming to address? And again, like we might have walked around this stuff before or touched on it, but it's nice to kind of, you know, answer the question as it is, and hopefully some people out there haven't heard this yet. So
I mean, in terms of main competitors, like I think there's a lot of people doing really interesting stuff in the space. You know, Fresa comes to mind. Like they, you know, have your digital twin and it's put on like a map of sorts like that. it's pretty interesting. I think they've done a good job so far with it. Decentraland, the Sandbox, like all these metaverse type things. Like, I don't consider native a metaverse at all. But inevitably, when you talk about real estate in a digital world on chain, like you get compared to that kind of stuff. But I don't put native in that bucket at all. In terms of like gaps and trends, long term, what this is like a very accessible network state. That like has an automated economic component into it. I'm imagining like local groups of native citizens and all the passport holders getting together within New York or Boston or LA for a beer or whatever. Like, I think that kind of thing is cool. And this idea of a digital society is cool. Like, I think it's more serious than a game, and I don't think a lot of people have like thought through that yet. But if you have a city of 100,000 persons, for lack of a better word, right, between dots and passport holders, you have a city of 100,000 people, and they're generating, let's call it on the low end, 50 million in, economic output between all the tokens and things like that. That's a significant thing. That'd be the county seat of most counties in America. And what that does over time, and that's on the low end, right? What that does over time, and then is if native is successful, like it's the first of many cities, and that's how you go from this like digital city to a digital network state, and then eventually a sovereign country. Even it's not off the board; it's kind of pie in the sky, but certainly not off the board. Like that kind of gap and trend is like, how do we get from the current situation to that world? I think is hard for a lot of people to like piece together. To me, it's like that's the gap.
Yeah.
Is bridging now and then,
right,
and doing that in like a fun game like way is the way to do it.
Yeah, because you're going to have people, obviously making money in factions, right? And then those people are going to want to stick together, and there's going to be other people out there that are counter trading them, and they're going to want to stick together. And what world is that we're in? It's similar to a lot of games that already exist, but completely different because obviously we're launching tokens with a launcher, and there's agents involved. So yeah, I think it was a fun question because I was like, well, I don't really know if like this one applies to this specific project, but I know that you're thinking about where this thing goes 5, 10, 15 years down the road. So yeah, cool. I think I want to go for next. Yeah, just speaking about the future. So obviously like Farcaster and Clanker, but like thinking about branding and what agents can look like, what those things will be in terms of dots and whatnot. What are some of like the longer term vision plans for it, right? If everything goes right, is there anything else out there that you want to currently leverage, or anything out there that might need to be developed to support something like this?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people are underestimating the idea of native as a Farcaster client, right? Like all the interactions we've talked about, like the faction forming and the front running and all the UGC and all that kind of stuff, that's happening via Farcaster, right? And dots will be a part of that as well. So like, I think the idea of native as both Clanker interface and Farcaster client hasn't been talked about a lot publicly by me or anyone else, but I think is a crucial piece there. I had a really good conversation last week with the Privy team. They're being super supportive of what I'm wanting to do with Clanker, both on the dots, or with native, both on the dot side and on the human side. And so suspect that's going to be a piece of tech that gets integrated. And then, yeah.
Yeah, no,
That's
it's just,
all I'll say about that right now. But
yeah, sure, of course. Yeah, no, I can't help but think, like, obviously, when things launch, there's all of these, like, tools and things that devs will develop and whatnot, and just thinking about that whole ecosystem of, like, other things that people are going to create to keep track of things and whatnot. It's super exciting to think about.
yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, like there will be a lot of on-chain data produced by Native, an API for Native, right? If you want to build whatever on top of Native, like there's no reason why you shouldn't be able to do that.
Yeah, that's going to be rad. I mean, people are just going to have a ton of fun with it, I'm sure, in the first few weeks and months, once, stuff's moving around and people are playing with it and people are spending, 3, 4, 5 hours a day in Native and more. No, it's wild to think about. All right, so let's see what else we have left. We got, yeah, I mean, I guess we can jump into, like, the collaboration process, right? Because we've talked about this privately, like first meeting, but injecting in a way that's meaningful for you and seamless, like just to kind of give people a bigger picture of like how we're gonna inject into your workflow and what that looks like, right? Because you're used to handling design systems, you're used to handling these things, but then there's also new elements that you're producing and siloing and want to bring together at a certain point. So like, give us some examples of ways in the past that this stuff has gone really successful for you, and how we can make sure that we're that for you, working together.
Yeah, generally speaking, whether I'm leading a large team of people or something like this, and it's just me and I'm working with, kind of outside, talent, like the thing that works best for me is having something that is like completely isolated from a work stream perspective and being able to hand that off and not worry about it. And like, you guys execute on it, and then come back for a feedback loop, execute, come back for a feedback loop, execute, etc. Like that works extraordinarily well for me. If you can't tell, like I have no qualms of saying like, this is really good, I don't like this, let's scratch this idea, like that type of thing. And I know that kind of thing is helpful for you guys as well. So like I don't have any problems doing that. Generally speaking, I like to, hire or work with really smart people, get aligned on like what we're trying to do, and then let you do your thing. Because that's what I would want someone to do with me. And so like this piece is super important, like getting the context right, getting the desired output concretized, and then, okay, come back when you have something,
right?
That works extraordinarily well for me. I said in the last video something that my community loved, by the way, that Native is a benevolent monarchy, a benevolent dictatorship. Like that's true, and that's the way that I work as well. But the benevolent piece is just as important as the dictatorship piece. Like, I think, I have a good idea of what we're after, and I think you guys are get it too, and so which is really good. And just being like clear and transparent with that feedback is crucial. So
that's one of the biggest things for us, is having like clear feedback. It's really difficult to work in a way where someone doesn't know what they want, and that's sometimes can be the case, and you can help try to push someone in a certain direction or uncover more. But that's why we've uncovered over the years that we have to do something like this, where there's a lot of front loading of questions and understanding and meeting in the middle. And then it slowly is a gradient over from like you having a lot of of the questions to answer to you asking us questions about why a certain direction why we chose this, why we chose that, and getting to a place where we're doing a lot of the execution and there's less and less, input. It's more so we're aligned and just cruising at that point. So
yeah, 100%. And what that does is I don't need to be involved every hour, day to day.
No.
You know what I mean? Like I can be super hands off. And as long as I trust that we've done the right alignment, the right contextualization up front, and we have a feedback loop kind of mechanism built in, which we do, like I don't need to be involved. In fact, I'd rather not. I got too much other stuff to do, So
yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, hey, we have a bunch of stuff in Figma. Go check it out in the next 24 hours. Give us some comments, record a loom, whatever you want to do, and then we get back to working again. So
yeah, and I'm absolutely keen to do that. I can, in terms of like nuts and bolts of like how we want to work together or whatever. Whatever's easiest for you guys. I can do a walkthrough loom type thing for on a Figma. We can hop on another call and go through stuff, and I can give you feedback, yes, no, hot, cold type stuff. Either way.
Yeah, I think it's case to case too, because like a lot of the bigger elements that we're going to be doing at the beginning, obviously with branding, it's like we will meet for a demo an hour, every week.
Yeah.
But then as we're working through some of the stuff in between, a lot of that stuff doesn't really necessarily require a meeting and can just have like thumbs up or thumbs down, quick explanations. So to kind of size it to fit based on.
I will say, just from a content perspective, the more video stuff we do, probably the better.
Totally.
Giving the community an idea of like what's happening here and what this process is, like these questions, all those kinds of things, like really interesting to people, I think.
Are we able to put some stuff in the weekly wrap up? Like
that would be huge.
Stuff we're working on, and I guess we'll have to get sort of it's an MSA, which I don't know if you've had time to look at it yet, but yeah, I mean, like the idea that we can just make public what we're working on for native in a way.
I'll sign a release. It's in the MSA, but scrap work, all that kind of stuff, all of it can be public.
Great.
I don't care. Yeah. And this is recorded, so it's you're above board.
Yeah, I mean, I have to get used to thinking like that because it's funny. I'm just so used to doing like quick little Loom videos for updates here and there if it's not something big. But for the sake of keeping everything tracked publicly, it's probably meetings for most of it.
I honestly forgot we were recording. All right,
that's great.
We're posting this to the world, so that's
yeah,
it's good stuff.
Yeah, and again, like I said, if anything's like way over the board, we're not trying to get anybody canceled here or anything. But and if something's like truly confidential, just let me know.
Sure.
But especially from a work perspective and things like that, like, because I'm gonna want to see it. I'm gonna want to see community comments like, "Hey, this is dope," or "This doesn't feel like native," or like, "This should be a T-shirt," or, whatever. Like, there's a lot of stuff like that would be interesting to see even community reactions to, and I think that's a really important input here. So
it adds a depth to it. Obviously, this would be our first time sort of building in public like this, at least for an all-out agency project like this. But it's almost like I can see how it can possibly slow things down. It's like building a product and getting UXR like too early when like things aren't ready. But also like I think this is going to be a cool ride for us to see how it works, making sure that we do capture input, people are heard, and but also that we don't let it slow down our process. So
and that was the reason for me bringing up benevolent dictatorship. I'm not waiting on community feedback to make a decision. I'm going to make a decision regardless.
Yep.
Right. But one of the input into that decision might be user feedback, right? Though not required. And so I don't want the build in public thing to be a speed bump or roadblock, or it shouldn't create more friction. But what you're already doing is completely fine to like make public.
Yeah.
I wouldn't do anything extra, but
Are we the first people to like help you with native, or have you been working with other folks in this space?
On the design and product side, like the design branding side, yes. So Jacob is a friend of mine. He was an engineer that helped me knock out something really particular for a week. Outside of that, it's just been me.
Cool. Okay.
Oh, I take that back too. I did a bounty for a swap frame that created a lot of the foundation for the upcoming Passport app.
Nice.
Nice.
Yeah, we got to get on bounties. We haven't done one yet. I think it's high time we try doing it as a company.
Yeah, either bounties or apps fun.
Yeah.
A lot of things. I think there's a lot of cool stuff we could tap into with the Farcaster community.
Yeah.
Yeah, that, like, a lot of
I'm fine for being like the context for that too. Like if it's like, hey, we want to do native merch or something like that, like, hey, we're gonna do a one-off run of whatever, like you could bounty that.
Yeah. It's so much easier. We have to get used to thinking in that respect too, because I know Nick has done it successfully from Clank Fun a few times, and there's a lot of people out there. People hop right on those things. They're excited to get their hands dirty. So yeah. Cool. So let's go to some like more fun and light things. So what was the first game, console, board game, etc. that you remember playing? You can answer all those. You can answer the most interesting one, whichever one, and then the next one you can lead into, which is the game you invested the most hours in.
The first console I ever played was probably the Atari. I'm not quite that old, but my dad had one. My dad wasn't a hardcore gamer, but he liked games. He had an Atari and we had an NES. Kaboom was the game on the Atari. It was like this guy was trying to break out of prison and he was on top of the prison wall and he would drop bombs and you had to like catch the bombs. The game was awesome. So that was like one of the first games I really remember. Tetris, my mom loved playing Tetris. I still love Tetris to this day. And have very fond memories of Mario, the Mario series on NES with my dad. So, first board game, probably Trivial Pursuit.
Nice.
My parents played it a lot together, and when I was old enough to be able to answer questions, I got included. And Candyland, that was like the first kids board game I remember playing.
Yeah.
The first board game I got serious about, other than Magic that I mentioned earlier, it's not really a board game, but you get the idea. Risk. I'm a pretty good Risk player.
Yeah, I've only played Risk like 2 or 3 times. I've played like tabletop games, which I guess are kind of similar, but each one has their own intricacies. So
yeah, Risk and Magic were my two. In terms of game I invested the most hours in,
Candyland.
not Candyland. Like,
talk about D&D a lot.
yeah, we got WoW. What's in here? What's in this?
well, I mean, the game with the loose definition, it's very clearly Magic the Gathering.
Yeah.
Nice.
There's no, like, I've done Magic more than I've done most things in my life. To be clear, like, not just games.
Well, can we, I guess, elaborate on that maybe a little bit too? I am curious, like favorite card, favorite land type, or like, you mentioned you have a blue deck, right? Control and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's typically what I play in terms of favorite card. I've got a few.
Yeah.
Yeah, current, all time,
Band, yeah, whatever.
I love Gifts Ungiven. I love Staff of Nin. I love Huntmaster of the Fells.
Nice.
I love Snapcaster Mage.
What is Staff of Nim? I forget.
Nin, Staff of Nin, like 9-inch
Nin.
nails. Yeah.
Yeah.
I forget the last one you mentioned. That's one of those ones where you can search the graveyard or search the deck. I forget. It's been a little bit since.
Snapcaster?
Yeah.
So he's a 2/1, costs 1 in the blue. When he comes into play, you can basically recast an instant or sorcery from your graveyard.
That's what it is. Yep.
Gifts Ungiven is 3 in a blue. You basically pick 2 cards from your deck to go to the graveyard, and the other 2 to go to your hand. It's a very dope card. But in terms of video game I've invested the most hours into, it's probably like Halo.
Yep. A lot of my youth was spent in Blood Gulch.
Yeah. It's either Halo, GoldenEye, Tetris, or Breath of the Wild.
Let's get it.
Nice. There's some crossover here, like the puzzling, the arcadey of like Tetris, like open world / linearness of Halo, GoldenEye, Breath of the Wild. They feel open world, but they have like a linear aspect. Breath of the Wild, I guess, is. But,
So it's funny you mentioned that. I play Breath of the Wild very linearly.
Right?
Like it's very like, who's the next boss? What's the next temple? Like,
Yeah.
Type thing.
Yeah. Same way. Because I play it like I played the one on N64.
Ocarina.
Yeah, Ocarina. Thank you. I almost said Majora's Mask. I was like, it's not. But yeah. Cool. Is there anything else? There was one that we had up here. What's your favorite mouse, keyboard, peripheral? Fun one to talk about. A lot of people usually say the MX. What is it, 560 or whatever?
Yeah, that's the mouse I use. MX Master 3S, or 4 or 2.
Uh-oh. I think he dropped.
Eric dropped.
Yeah.
Probably he was using the buttons on the MX Master and dropped.
All right.
It happens to me. When I travel, though, I just use this one because it's in my briefcase, but I definitely miss it when I don't have it.
Yeah.
Might have accidentally hit the back button. Yeah.
Yeah. Or we went the overtime. I wonder if it's still It's definitely still recording.
Yeah.
We haven't covered the attributes yet.
Yeah. Do we want to go through those or goals? I mean, really, those are the only 2 left. I don't know if yeah, what do you guys think?
I think we're here. Let's just run through it all because we're gonna want this information when we're looking through this.
Yeah.
I clicked when I
Dude,
held
we
up my
called
mouse.
it. We called it. We were like, he definitely just clicked the button. Yeah.
It's weird because I didn't click one of the main buttons. I clicked the side button, and for some reason that like exited it out.
Yeah.
So that is probably and thanks for staying because that kept everything running. That's probably my favorite mouse. I use my primary keyboard. I switch from time to time, but it's like a IBM Model S or Model M. Sorry. So it's got like a really clicky thing. I've got a travel keyboard as well. It's in my book bag right now. It's a mechanical. Dan's seen it, but it's a mechanical I carry with me in my book bag.
You said you do a lot of doodling and stuff like that. Do you primarily do that on an iPad? Do you do that in like pen and paper? Do you have
pen and paper. I'm a pens guy and a paper guy. Like, I'm particular about both of those things. I like fountain pens. My day-to-day pen, I use a G2 Pilot 1.0, not the 07.
Oh, I was gonna ask.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
I like it bold. It's like the Gotham future of pens. You know.
You probably got some ink. I think I have a little bit of ink on my hand too from the.
I do when I use fountain pens for sure. I also really like. I don't have one right here, but I really like the Tornado pens as well. From Retro. The Retro 51s. From a paper perspective, I use a lot of field notes. I keep like a box back here of just random field notes. I use Mnemosyne a lot, which is Mnemosyne. I use Mnemosyne notebooks, Syne, for stuff.
I don't know if I've ever used a Tornado pen before. Maybe I haven't.
They're great. They're great. They come in cool designs as well. I always have 2 Stanleys beside me. One for water, one for coffee.
Love that detail.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I don't like the taste of water, so I have like electrolyte packets that I mix in.
Oh yeah, same here.
Yeah, water's gross.
It's always something like either.
You like water out there?
Don't sign up for native.
I'm trying to stop swearing, so like I'm trying to cut it back.
Yeah. Water's boring, man. Like, I don't know. I gotta at least put like some citrus in there or something, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Lemon, something. Yeah. I'll tell you another peripheral that I recently copped and have fallen in love with. Copped it like back in December, just before Christmas. I think it might have been just after Christmas. Either way, is an external portable monitor.
Yes, I'm on one right now, actually.
Yeah, I got one. It's like a Temu model or whatever. It's like $60 on Amazon. Game changer. Because I am a multi-monitor person. So I've got 3 right here in front of me, and if my MacBook allowed for more, I'd probably use 6. But
yeah, ideally I would have like my most used like apps and chat interfaces all on their own screen. Like that would be so amazing. I did the same. I got one like just, I don't know, it was like $70 on Amazon just to try it. And I'm liking it. And I'm like, maybe now I'll go for the more brand name one that's got like the 2 screens and you got swivel in all directions and all that stuff. I wanted to make sure that it was good because I always feel neutered when I'm traveling by like the amount of screens I have. And it's like, it just makes it so much harder to work when you're not like at your post, like with everything there. So
I agree.
Is there a really hard-working piece of like wooden plank by the hot tub that you drop over the thing to use as a desk?
Not so much. So again, the hot tub is primarily for like conceptual work. Like I usually do take like my phone's usually with me for note taking digitally. I often do have like field notes or a pen with me. Usually have my Kindle with me, which is waterproof and paperwhite.
Nice.
So I do a lot of reading then. I have Write in the Rain notes for both the shower and hot tub.
Dude, the shower is such an unlock. Like you posted that a couple weeks ago. How's it been going taking notes in the shower?
Dude, it's game changing. I think I've thrown it away no, I haven't. Like This is a recent one. It's just like tasks and a sketch of a screen that was written in the shower. This is the menu architecture for dot spaces. This is the UI design for dot spaces that was done in the shower.
Hey man, people are out here, just showering normally, and I think we got to up our game. We got all these agents just working all the time. Derek's out here working in the shower.
Well, the people who shower normally, there's a term for them. It's exit liquidity. So this is another screen.
Yeah.
That actually has like some investor type stuff on it, but I don't care. But that's another like screen design type thing. Just yeah. So
gotta work harder, gotta level up. I'm gonna have to do it. They're in my cart in Amazon, so next time I pull the trigger on something, they're gonna arrive.
Well, the thing is, like, you don't get to choose when an idea comes.
You don't. No.
And where.
Yeah.
You just need to be sure that you capture it for execution later, because ideas without execution are useless.
Yeah.
So capture ideas, whether on a phone or on a waterproof pad or whatever. Sticky notes, which I always keep with me.
Capture ideas correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah. And before you lose like the moment of it, because like once you lose that moment, you're not going to get the nuance of the thought, and you have to just capture it and scribble it. Yeah.
Yep. And like you can say, "Oh, I'll remember this later," or blah blah blah, and you might, but not at the fidelity that you need in order to, like Sage said, capture it correctly, right? Like you might capture the essence of an idea, but that's not the full thing. Like,
Yep. Yep, I have a notebook next to my bed that's just got a bunch of chicken scratch in it, and usually take the coffee out in the morning to my desk, hop right out, the robe out, and look what I wrote down. If it was a night where I scribbled something, most of the time I can remember what it is. Sometimes it takes a day to come back, but then I get it. But at least it was down somewhere.
Yep. Yeah, that's the thing for me. Like, I'm not really a morning person. I mean, I am, but it's like 2 a.m., not 8 a.m. I'm a late night, early morning person. And then I'll go to bed and then wake up. Like the mornings are usually, it takes me about an hour to actually fully like come up to speed and crank up, like with coffee and, read my Bible in the morning. And then, then I'm like finally awake. And then I can get some work done, But for that first period, I can't do any like native thinking or much less anything else, Yeah.
I've been really trying to stay off of like socials and all that stuff, and just like make lists, execute, prep the day, get the dog walk, do all that stuff, and not really try to check anything and then jump into it. Because it takes me a while to come up to speed too. Like sometimes if I get up at 5 a.m, I can be up to speed by like 6 and then start executing for a few hours before like the wave of notifications and everything starts coming in, but it's rare,
Yep. 100%.
Yeah.
Well, we've got a couple other things in here. One of the last sticky notes is kind of a good way to ease us into the next section. So it's basically like, what is the projected timeline for key milestones during our engagement, any beta launches, upcoming events, or partnerships that could influence the trajectory? What we're kind of going to be looking at next is any goals that you foresee in the short term, medium term, and long term. And I know something in the very short term is you're at ETH Denver very shortly. So I think like maybe capturing that. I don't know if it's really relevant to what you're trying to achieve with native and stuff like that, but something to consider with how we're going to do it.
Yeah, so the two shortest term things are, like you said, the ETH Denver thing. I'm demoing Dots there and like a lot of the capabilities that Dots have. there and then talking about how it's built and all that kind of stuff, which will be fun. I'm hoping my Apple account got approved today. I'm hoping to get a test flight out for the Passport app this week.
Wow.
Although that's going to be cutting it close by the time it gets like reviewed and stuff. So probably the week after ETH Denver will be an app launch. Also at ETH Denver, I'm dropping stamps, which are basically POAPs. They're like third-party collectibles on your passport. So there's going to be two at the two events that I'm doing, the Farcaster meetup, and then the demo with Coinbase. That should be fun as well. That's going to be like a beta launch. And then it's launching both Dot Studio and Dot Spaces. That's like the 3-month marker for me. Is getting, because at that point, like absent the actual native UI, like that's the core of native. You have dots that are being able to trade, you can control them, you can sponsor them, etc. And you have passport holders, which are humans, which gates dot creation, etc. So that's like the core of native. And hopefully that's going to be done Q1 this year. So by the end of March.
Yeah.
I'm
so
hoping.
like,
Right.
So, yeah. So that stuff will be like probably either launched or like in testing groups or something that affect by the time FarCon rolls around.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So by FarCon, they will be like in early testing and at some level of scale, right? Like some passport holders.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I'm assuming you're probably going to have some sort of a talk there as well. I'm guessing to some degree.
I don't know yet. Maybe. It's not off the board. I haven't talked to anybody about it, but
yeah,
it's okay if not. It's okay if so.
Yeah. Totally. Yep.
Medium term, like that's where you get to the actual native UI, and kind of taking the primitives that are dots and passport holders, and then launching homes and property and things like that. That's kind of that next piece, and then long term, it's more people, more cities. So,
well, yeah, and one thing that I was talking to Dan about before this call, in terms of like the goals, is it could also be like the flip side. Like, what current challenges are you trying to accomplish in the short term, or the medium term, or the long term, or what challenges do you foresee in the long term that we can set up successes in the short term to kind of give us a level up to get there?
Yep.
Great question. So a couple of the challenges in the short term got resolved last week. So I actually don't think I have like some big challenges in the short term.
Cool.
Like I have a clear path now on how to solve dots and passports for the next couple months.
It's just man hours and elbow grease.
That's right. It's just man hours at this point.
Yep.
The native UI is so nebulous right now that that's the biggest challenge, is like, what does that look like? How does it come together? Type stuff. I wouldn't call it either a challenge or a goal, but an open question rather, is what I want to do with investing and building a team.
Yep.
Do I want to raise money? Do I want to build a team? I don't know yet. I've told people, because a lot of people have reached out wanting to give money. I've told people that I wanted to get the MVP stuff out first. The like dots and the passport stuff, etc., out first, and then see where I am before raising money. But that's an open question, not a challenge, not a goal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's it, to be honest.
Cool.
From a technological perspective, I think most of the challenges are at this point are resolved.
Yeah, I think a lot of it's going to come from what we're working on together, because that seems like the biggest next thing to tackle is the UI, the marketing, the branding, and then homes and property. I'm sure you'll get to a point where you're feeling pretty baked out on it by the time that comes around. So
yeah, I would move branding a little bit earlier. It's like at the end of short term.
Yeah, because I'd imagine some of that stuff is going to come into play for even smaller term or smaller stuff like ClankerCon, which will be end of April, right before FarCon. We'll be most of the way through the branding process at that point.
Yep.
Yeah, because we're expecting minimum of 6 weeks, maybe a little bit longer for branding, but we're gonna settle in on inevitably some typefaces and colors and stuff like that earlier than that, and that stuff will start to trickle in. So
yep.
Yeah. Dope.
Cool. Do we want to try to get any of these attributes now that we're warmed up? It's really only the last 5 questions that we have. I think it might give us a nice leg up into what kind of we want to explore.
Yeah. So, I don't know. Do you want to lead this, Austin, or Sage? But, it's really...
Sage had to drop, yeah. But I'm cool too. Yeah.
Okay.
So these are... Yeah, I can... I'm cool to lead it. I think, Dan, you maybe gave a brief intro into it before, but these are the 4 core attributes that really make up the X factor, making you different from your company than anybody else and stuff like that. So the first question we have is roughly about your culture, and it's basically how is your community described native? So that's either people that you talk on Telegram with, people that you talk to on Farcast with, stuff like that.
Ambitious, complex, exciting, fresh, positive.
Yeah.
As an anecdote, somebody in the Telegram literally today was like, what exactly did they say? I want to read it verbatim. This chat is far more positive than 99% of all Telegrams.
Oh man, that is the biggest compliment you can get.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, it's similar to, I guess, how would native describe its... Well, no, that's how users would. Yeah, so that's enough. Yeah, so how would native describe its community, right? I guess, it could be they could share the same thing, but it could be different as well.
Yeah, I think there's a mix of aspirational and actual or realized characteristics. So I call them neighbors, and that's kind of the culture that I've set. Is look, this is not just speculation. It's we're building a community. We tend to be pretty comical. We have there's a lot of fun in the chat. We actually enjoy when one of these scammers or
the thought bot,
the raiders come in or whatever, the people that want to list your token or whatever. The community at this point has gotten excited whenever someone like that shows up, because what's Derek gonna say, and then they start to bully them as well, and
love that.
It's a point of camaraderie.
Totally.
It's we have there's a sense of humor about it. and by extension, this is part of the aspirational thing. Two aspirational things. Number one is joy. Like I want people to like have fun with native and enjoy it, not just it being like a money thing or a technical cool thing. To there should be some joy in it, and that's probably my biggest concern with like the super clean isometric Apple-esque aesthetic is it robs a little joy.
It's that brutalist mentality that kind of takes it from you.
But the community paints that with their personalities on it, and that's what makes it,
Yeah, that's right. And ideally, I think that comes down a lot. Like, it's okay if you have, that kind of clean UI aesthetic that fades into the background, if everything else, the UGC, the dots branding, like if all of that is like fun and colorful and playful and whatever, like, you can get away with more brutalism elsewhere. So that's like one thing I do think about. The other aspirational thing is, we mentioned it earlier in this conversation, but intentionality. Like I want people to do stuff in native on purpose, not just like haphazardly or on accident. So
yeah, even if it's like an experiment, like do it with intention.
Yep, exactly.
No. Dope.
Cool. We can go over to the next one, feeling. So how does your community feel after interacting with native? This could be current or medium term. So this could also be talking to you directly. It could be onboarding to the platform. It could be just if you've heard people interfacing with just the brand in itself.
Yeah, I would say probably the biggest thing is hopeful. I think on a number of axes, right? They're obviously hoping for a financial return. But I also think that like people see native as like a very unique kind of thing where it's not just another agent that spits out random advice, nor is it like a real estate metaverse type thing like Sandbox or Decentraland. It's kind of like a very unique thing. And I think that has given a lot of people hope for what on-chain stuff can be. I think people feel, and Sage kind of alluded to it with the high school stuff. It's like recapturing kind of a childlikeness in a mature way, right?
Yeah, nostalgia, but like
nostalgia, but not.
Yeah,
it's like innocent nostalgia, or like.
Yeah.
Another word is joy, for lack of a better word. It's just like the idea that you get to feel like a kid again, like you're entering a new world, and like you're Vasco da Gama or Christopher Columbus or whatever, like you're a pioneer, in this new digital city. Like that kind of feeling is is interesting. Adventurous type thing.
Yeah, I don't know. There's something that I'm trying to pull out of my head too. It's like there's something around like hospitality and comfort, that I feel personally, because it's obviously you and it's the way that the brand is built currently, and it's a longer term project, right? Like that's the whole idea. This isn't a meme coin. So for that reason, there's like this comfort aspect to it too, which I can't really place as well.
Yeah, like in a lot of this stuff I reference like Mr. Rogers, like in the neighborhood, in his neighborhood, and like I'll say stuff like "Welcome home, neighbor," and things like that to kind of like re-emphasize that comfort or coziness.
Yeah, coziness, great. Yeah.
But it's like I don't know. It's a weird middle ground between like coziness and comfort and adventures. It's like being fully comfortable being one of the first settlers on Mars. It's like that doesn't make sense, you know? Like how could you be
Totally. Yeah.
You know, so frontier oriented, so new tech type stuff, but also completely at home, you know, safe.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a wild wrangling of all these things that is working, and you know.
Yeah, I hope
Crazy.
so.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, one of the last ones is impact. What tangible impact does Native have on them, being your users, your community, and stuff like that? And I guess the most obvious one is kind of, you know, monetary impact. But if there's anything else that anybody has ever shared with you, please note it.
Yeah, I think as of right now, that's probably the biggest, is the monetary piece. I think, you know, people have and are forming real relationships through the Native community. Yeah, beyond that, I can't think of any.
No, that's great. That's great. And this one, it might be a little hard, and a lot of these kind of are, because we're like, you know, thinking about ourselves in a way that we don't usually. But this one is your X factor, right? How is Native different from others? In a lot of ways throughout this conversation we've had for the 2 hours, we've kind of uncovered that it's very unique, you know. But define who the others are and compare if you can. But yeah, how is Native different from anybody else? Any other one on the Clanker leaderboard, for instance, or just
Yeah, metaverse games in general, you know, like that's
Yeah, I think, you know, when I think about like other Clanker project tokens, you know, like Clank Fund, love Banker, love Deployer, love Nick, right? Like when I think about this, they're just so very clearly utilitarian.
Mm-hmm.
And Native's not that, right? Native is much more entertainment than it is utility, at least in the near term.
Yeah.
Whereas, you know, with Clank Fun or with Banker, like there is an entertainment aspect, but it's much less than the utility aspect. Whereas even at scale, I think with Native it'll be a 1-to-1 thing, right? You come to get your paycheck, but you also come to like BS around with Dots and others.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, you can do that with Banker to a certain extent, but it feels like, not that it's limited in scope, but like you have a nice interaction, and that's sort of like where it ends. And like, as long as you know the nuance of how to communicate with Banker, you know, there's a lot of options that you can play with. But the X factor of Native is that like you come into this world, and it is a world with other people and dots and all of that stuff. And yeah, it's the entertainment piece is huge.
The other thing that I see is, and this kind of dovetails with feeling as well, like the childlike piece. People get to imagine again.
Oh.
They get to dream again. You know what I mean? It's like,
right.
Yeah, sure, I'm a CPA by day, but in Native, I'm like running the coffee industry or a nightclub or,
right,
you know, a co-working space, or I'm drug dealing to Dots or whatever it is. Like, you know, and you'll notice that in the Native community, like people are like, my Dot's going to be this, right? You know, which I think is fascinating and really cool to be able to give people imagination back.
Yeah. I mean, it's like that sense of like playing Roller Coaster Tycoon and like knowing that like you have the bills to pay, right? And you have to figure it out, but then knowing that that's like real money, but it's also tied to like fun relationships with people that are posting on a social media platform. There's a lot tied into it, and it's it's tough to tie it into, I guess, one word, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that imagination piece I would consider part of the X factor as well.
Yeah, this imaginative world.
Yep.
That like new childlike sense of wonder, if you will.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that, wonder, imagination, dream. Like, you get to think big again. Like, it's almost like if you had a chance to do it all over, what would you be? It's like, well, you can be a native,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. I think that's about it. We went way over, but there was a lot of good stuff that we captured here, honestly. We kind of gave ourselves a little leg up for what we're going to talk about next week. So that's kind of like the real initial brainstorming, setting the tone, probably expanding on the mood board a little bit more. And I think that's the one that we had slated for Friday. So I guess just double checking to see if you wanted to do that on Friday during ETH Denver, if you needed more time in between sessions, if like logistically tech wasn't going to work out to live stream it, kind of talk about that here now.
Yeah, well, I don't know what the tech situation is going to be. I assume it'll be okay. But I don't have a really good sense of that as of right now. I probably will by Thursday afternoon.
Right.
Okay.
Once you get there and suss it out,
Yeah. I'll have time like in the early afternoon. So like the time is available.
On Friday,
Yeah, on Friday.
Sweet. Okay. What I guess if it's going to be like an hour-long session, what's a good time to shoot for, given that everything's all kosher and everything's good?
Probably 4 Eastern.
The same. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's great. I mean, that works for us. If we can kind of keep it the same time, if we have to deviate, as the weeks go by, we can always do a one-off here or there. But if we keep it around 4 on
I'll just go ahead and like pencil it in.
Yeah.
For you guys, and then
you need to plan it anyway for the recording. So
let's assume that it's happening, and I'll let you guys know if it doesn't.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
And if not, we'll plan for maybe Monday, same time.
Yep.
Or whatever, because I don't know how long you're there for, but we'll work it out.
I come back Sunday.
Okay. Cool.
Sweet.
Yeah, so I mean, anything that you can think of in terms of like, if you want to add anything to this, let us know. It should be open to you. If it's like for whatever reason closed, just let me know and I can change some settings and get you access again. But I mean, adding anything either here to the mood board that we've been developing on the left-hand side or to the arena, whichever works, just let us know. If you added more stuff to the arena, we can drag it in here.
Okay.
And then we'll be making our own sort of like vision board / like tone board, sort of like what I did with Proxy for some of the gifts that I was sharing like last week or a week ago. And then we're going to kind of meet in the middle on like a vision board and what that is. And that's when we're going to start getting into fonts, colors, icons, things that start to overlap and create stuff that will be represented as logos, whether that's a standalone logo, whether that's a combination mark, logo mark, all that sort of stuff. So
cool.
Another week of sort of like, mood boarding and vision boarding. And then the third week will really be where we start to get into some sketches, some fonts, some colors, all of that stuff, and start meeting in the middle. And that's when it really starts to ramp up for us. So
okay,
it's fun. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah. And I'm having a lot of illuminations. So like usually after these sessions, I go in and write down a number of things that, made sense to me in terms of like where we want to go in terms of vision. And it'll be exciting to see where we meet on Friday.
Awesome. Yeah, looking forward to it.
This was great, Derek. Well, can't wait to see the next session.
All right, man. Yeah, appreciate you guys.
All right,
See you,
bro.
man.
All right,
Cheers.
later.
Adios.